Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the Easter season and the different episodes that we had for that. And we are jumping, yes, Peter, we are jumping back into 2 Samuel and the life of David. So, we left off with David's sin with Bathsheba, and we had talked about his wrongdoing there. Boys and girls, we're just going to summarize a few things this morning from 2 Samuel 13 and 14 that basically hit home the fact that our sin affects far more than just us. Boys and girls, we saw that the baby that David had with Bathsheba passed away. Obviously, that affected the baby, that affected their family. Well, as the years go on, David has other sons. David has Absalom, for one, and he has Amnon as another. There's more, but we're going to talk about those two right now. Well, he also has a daughter named Tamar. And the son Amnon does something terrible to Tamar. Absolutely horrible, awful. And Absalom, the brother, gets so angry and so upset. He is going to plot revenge against his brother Amnon because of what he did to the sister Tamar. Absalom cannot forgive. He cannot put this aside. Boys and girls, we're going to start in verse 27 of 2 Samuel 13. But Absalom pressed him that he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. So Absalom's talking to David when it says it pressed him. He's pushing his dad. He's like, Dad, let Amnon come. Let all my brothers come to my house. Let's have a party. And he's pushing and he's pushing and he's pushing. And David's like, no. Well, he pushed, and David said that Amnon, yeah, not literally, that Amnon could go to Absalom's house. Boys and girls, do you think this is a good idea? If you have your enemy over to your house, are you really planning to do something nice or kind? Yeah, not usually. Well, Absalom has a plot to kill Amnon. He tells his servants that when Amnon basically gets drunk and he's not conscious of what's going on, that they should take him out and kill him. And they do just that. Absalom seeks revenge. Boys and girls, we see that David's sin affected his family for generations. Now he's got 2 sons who are killed, a daughter who's been damaged, and now another son who's murdered his brother. The sin affects more people. Well, boys and girls, let's look at verse 30. It says, And it came to pass while they were in the way that tidings came to David, saying, Absalom hath slain all the king's sons, and there is not one of them left. Oh, wait a minute, boys and girls. Did we say he killed all the sons? No. What would we call this today? We'd call it a rumor, wouldn't we, boys and girls? A rumor has spread and it got to David. Can you imagine the heartache when he thinks all of his children are dead except Absalom? Boys and girls, he's heartbroken. Our tongue can do a lot of damage. Spreading rumors can do a lot of damage, and that's what's happened. Well, verse 31, Then the king arose and tare his garments and lay on the earth, and all his servants stood by, and with their clothes rent. Verse 32, And Jonadab, the son of Shimeah, David's brother, answered and said, Let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men of the king's son, for Amnon only is dead. For by the appointment of Absalom this hath been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. So boys and girls, the rumor spreads. It gets to David. David thinks all his sons are dead. But then someone comes in and tells him, no, it's just Amnon. Now, David does weep. David does mourn for his son Amnon. But boys and girls, you say, well, I would never say that somebody died and spread that as a rumor. But boys and girls, our tongues can do a whole lot to destroy. Our tongues, if we don't keep them in check, do a lot of damage. Well, Absalom, after he kills Amnon, he fleds. He leaves for a period of 3 years and goes to Geshur. Verse 38, So Absalom fled and went to Geshur and was there for 3 years. Now, the beginning of chapter 14, Joab has a plan because he thinks this isn't right, that Absalom is gone. He thinks David should go get him. And he sends a lady to go in and see David and kind of as a plan and a story. And it basically gets David to realize that he should bring Absalom home. So in verse 21 of chapter 14, and the king said unto Joab, behold, now I have done this thing. Go therefore, bring the young man Absalom again. So after 3 years, he tells Joab, go get Absalom, bring him back to Jerusalem. Verse 22, and Joab fell to the ground on his face and bowed himself and thanked the king. And Joab said, today thy servant knoweth that I have found grace in thy sight, my lord, O king, and that the king hath fulfilled the request of his servant. Joab was unsure of how David would respond, so he was grateful that David responded well and said that he could go get Absalom from Geshur. Verse 23, so Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. So we read that verse, we're like, great, the family's going to be reunited, yes! But then there's verse 24. And the king said, let him turn to his own house, and let him not see my face. So Absalom returned to his own house and saw not the king's face. So he's back in Israel, he's back in Jerusalem, but he can't see his dad's face. The family still isn't united. He's closer, but they're still not united. While Absalom is known for his beauty, boys and girls, verse 25 tells us about his beauty and how he looked. And that day it was a treasure to grow their hair long. The Bible tells us in verses 25 and 26 that he would grow it out for a year and then cut it. And when he would cut it, it would weigh approximately 4 pounds. He had very full, thick, beautiful hair. Yeah, mine doesn't weigh 4 pounds, but it does definitely get heavy enough that it has to be cut. David won't see Absalom for another 2 years. So we're talking a total now of 5 from the time that he has fled. He won't see him. Well, Absalom pleads with Joab. He's like, you brought me back. You're my dad's commander. Can't you convince my dad? And he pleads with Joab to come see him. And Joab won't come see him either. He pleads with him a second time. Joab won't come see him. Now, from what we know about Absalom, do we think it's a good idea to ignore him? Yeah, probably not. We've learned that Absalom takes things into his own hands. He handles them his way to get what he wants, and he doesn't really care about the people who stand in his way. Well, Absalom actually has his servant set Joab's field on fire, and that gets Joab's attention. Joab comes over to see what Absalom wants after that. Absalom tells him, I want to see my dad. I want to see King David. You've got to get me an audience with King David. Well, in chapter 14, the last verse, verse 33, says, so Joab came to the king and told him, and when he had called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. When they finally were united, boys and girls, they did show love to one another, but it took 5 years. Boys and girls, that's a long time to hold a grudge against someone. That's a long time not to forgive someone. Sin affects those around us. My school students recently memorized Proverbs 13:20 that says, he that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. Boys and girls, if you walk with wise people, you become wiser. If you walk with fools, you will be destroyed. It's a principle in God's word. You reap what you sow. Those that you surround yourself with do affect you. Sin affects those around us, and it costs us more than we want to pay. David didn't realize the cost, the ripple effect on his family for the sin that he did with Bathsheba. And boys and girls, restoration and forgiveness are important. It took David 5 years to see Absalom again face to face. Boys and girls, don't let that amount of time go by with anyone. Your kids right now in 5 years probably feels like an eternity. But boys and girls, if you have a problem with somebody, take care of it. Don't hold on to it. Don't keep that bitterness. Forgive. Be ready to forgive. Even if they don't ask you to forgive them, forgive, boys and girls. And then keep in mind what damage rumors do, the damage that our tongue can do. Boys and girls, we don't want it to all be negative. We have the flip side of that verse, that wise people will be around wise people, make them wiser. And boys and girls, our tongue can be used for a lot of good. How will you use your tongue this week for good? See you next week.